Hello everyone and welcome to Daria Draws. Today I'm demonstrating painting of mushrooms. I do have a reference, but you don't really need it in case you'd like to follow the tips. I'm always priming my canvas first with some brown, like a sienna or Mars brown or maybe some umber. Then I'm going to do the outlines of the plate and draw in the mushrooms one by one. I'm using the smaller brush with the brown paint to draw, and I'm using a bigger brush with no paint on it as an eraser in case I do make a mistake, which is perfectly fine at this stage. Now, once I'm satisfied with the sketch, I'm moving on to doing the mid-tones first, which is not very typical since we do have a lot of objects and each has its own special color and shade and each has its own shadow. It's kind of easier to just do the mid-tones first, kind of separate each object, and then do the shadows and the lights and highlights and so on. In case certain objects have a same shade or same color, I'm using some outline to still distinguish one mushroom from another until I do the full-on shadows. Of course, we shouldn't forget about the background either, and the plate is going to be white, but for now we aren't doing any highlights, and so a greenish gray color is going to be great. Since it is a lot cooler than the mushrooms, it will add a little bit of color contrast. Now I'm beginning to work a little bit on the lights, so the midtones will be visually darker and they will act like a step between the light and the shadow. So I'm not afraid to use some texture since the mushrooms are very textury and they're not smooth and perfect. I'm also working on the shadows a little bit, kind of mixing in the same midtones and adding a little bit of a darker brown just to make the colors a little bit deeper. As you can see, the lights and the shadows are looking very cohesive, and the trick is to first mix the midtone and then add a bit of white or yellow to create a lighter shade, and then add a little bit of brown to the midtone to create the shadow shade. And that way you will have about 3 little batches for each mushroom. I'm adding some light and some shadows to the plate as well because we need everything to look three-dimensional, not just the mushrooms. As a final step for the first session, I'm just covering the background in this wooden gold color to make it look like a wooden table afterwards. Now, once the painting is dry, which can take up to a week, I'm going to redefine the mushrooms a little bit with a small brush and a similar color to the actual mushroom tops. After that, I'm adding some vibrant colors to the mushrooms, certain details like the tears or certain details on the stems like leftover soil. I'm also adding more texture to make the painting look a little more interesting. But so far, no highlights. We're just sticking to the light, mid-tone, and shadows. Now I'm making the light a little bit more concentrated. It is not a highlight yet, but it is very close to it. After adding some transparent shadows with a very light mixture of brown turpentine and a little bit of oil, I'm moving on to some final details. I'm adding some highlights now and more texture, and also working a little bit on the plate, adding there a bit of light, so that it does look three-dimensional, and just overall looking at the whole painting, and whatever needs to be done, I do that now. And here's the end result, which I'm very pleased with. The painting doesn't look overworked. It is still very fresh, without too many details, but not too little at the same time. And I hope you enjoyed looking at it as well. Do leave a comment, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next video.